Park City, Utah, the second stop of the Viessmann FIBT World Cup Tour, the home of the 2002 Winter Olympic Games on the western side of the continental US, is home to what they call the greatest snow on Earth. And winter arrived here with a bang last Friday. Storms throughout the weekend have left it looking very wintry indeed. We're getting ready for the first of two runs in the men's Skeleton World Cup competition. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martin Haven. Sitting alongside me is Canadian women's skeleton athlete Melissa Hollingsworth. Good morning, Mel.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back.
Delighted to have some knowledge in the booth. Now, yesterday we had a fairly clear morning, got a little overcast, and we had a few flurries of snow. Nothing much to interrupt the racing, but today, very misty. And that might change the nature of this Park City track.
Yes, and you know, the conditions of the ice today are very different from training, so runner selection and even some of the lines that the guys will be taking, it might be an interesting race.
Well, this track is different from most others. It gets very fast very early.
Yes, and it's known as a pusher's track. We see that Tretyakov has the record, as he does in most tracks in the world. Very fast Russian athlete, and that little bit at the start generally carries you all the way down the track. The top part is pretty gentle, a little bit of a labyrinth. Here's the first pressure corner going into corner 4, Sunny, and this is a tricky part, corner 5. If you have height too late and go into corner 6, it's over. That's what happened to me yesterday. Smashed the wall right here going into 7. This labyrinth, it's all about aerodynamics and the least amount of work possible. And 11-12 transition, we may see some oscillations and some hits going into corner 12 right here, which will push you away. Again, bleeding speed. We don't want to see that. We want to see smooth runs. Tricky component, corner 14 as you go downhill and now uphill. So aerodynamics, maybe some weight will help that momentum to cross the finish line with a very fast time.
Well, the start record set by Alexander Tretyakov, that dates back to 2006, but Martin Rettel, who now coaches the Austrians, 2001, pre-Olympic Games, that record didn't even get beaten in the games, you know, where you think everybody is at their peak. So that's got to be one of the longest standing track records. Whether we'll see it beaten today or not, not sure. He thought, as we talked to him at the top, that it's going to be a fairly frosty track this morning, because when the temperature's up, Mel, the refrigeration is on hard, and the moisture in the air, that's like when you open your icebox and you have that frostiness inside, right?
Yes, and the ice will be a little bit spongy, so it'll be softer. And like I said, the ice is quite a bit warmer today than what it was for training, so maybe some of these guys were using sharper runners in training so that they were not skidding their sleds on those straightaways with no pressure. And now it's going to be sticky, which if you have sharper runners, it's going to slow you down.
We saw Alexander Tretyakov, that stat. He's won 4 of the last 5 World Cup races on this track. The other man to win is one of the coaches, Zach Lund. He won 2008. Well, our start list has Tretyakov going second off the top of the hill, so everybody who follows will pretty much know where they have to be. We're going to scratch Ben Sanford, unfortunately. The tall Kiwi has injured his back a little in training. He's not the only one. So that brings us down to just 27 sleds and right down at the tail of the field, because we're now on this year's World Cup rankings. We see Frank Rommel obviously being disqualified last weekend means that he has got 0 points for the season, and so he is right down at the bottom, behind even some of our rookie sliders. So he's got a lot of work to do. And
in ice conditions like this was his greatest fear, to try and get that monkey off his back. He's going to be starting at the bottom of the field with the worst ice conditions.
Well, let's get the race underway. Our first slider is Italy's Maurizio Aioli. He's not the World Cup leader, but the top 10 go into a random draw, and he happened to get start draw number 1.
Maurizio, this is a fantastic draw for him. I don't think he's ever been in the top 10 before. He had a great result in Lake Placid last week. Went into corner 5 a little bit early, and you can see late into 6, up to the roof, oscillations there. Oh, quick transition into 7. He got very lucky, he stayed off that wall, but you can see he's late in this labyrinth and he's working very hard when you want to be aerodynamic. That's quiet form. You see him going into corner 11 here. A little bit late, but at least he didn't hit that wall, so that's nice. He'll be setting the pace here, but like you say, we'll wait for Tretyakov to see how fast this ice really is today.
Absolutely. A little bit of scratching, and here as he starts to come uphill towards the finish line, 119 kilometers an hour. That's still 74.5 miles an hour. And the fastest speed going into corner 6, 78.8 miles an hour. Now, we sort of bandy these words around and the numbers around. And Mel, you know, you guys are all used to that, but to the fan at home, 78 miles an hour on sheet ice in your car sounds like insanity, never mind on a tea tray.
Exactly. When your head and your neck is not supported, you have to rely on your neck and your back muscles to keep your head off that ice. You do not want it to be scraping on the ice. We've had a lot of issues with concussions this year, especially in the Canadian team, so you have to be very strong and very quiet on your sled.
You're absolutely right. Striking along the ice not only doesn't feel good, but slows you down. Weighing the sled and the athlete together, maximum weight for the combination and for the sled on its own. Now then, Alexander Tretyakov won 4 of the last 5 World Cup races here. And that means that for Martins Ducros to continue his winning streak, he's going to have to overturn the form.
Yes, watch this push monster, this Russian. He's amazing on the start. He can run it out long and far, and let's see what the pace is today. A 4:59. That's a 10th off the push record, but like we've talked about with this moist air, the ice is not going to be as fast today.
Well, when he first started in the World Cup, he was pulling out these exceptional starts and just rocked everybody back. Everybody's only hope was that he would hit lots of stuff on the way down. Now he's, with every year, hitting less and less and less.
He is. His form is getting so much better, and he has Willie Schneider as his coach. He's teaching him new lines down the track, and he has different equipment this year. So we're expecting him to do well the World Cup and get those Olympic qualifiers, and see him do well in Sochi as well.
Obviously, he's going to be one of the big focuses. You know, he's a massive Russian medal hope, you've got to say. So they'll be really pushing him along. 123.6 kilometers an hour, and we saw Maurizio early at 119 down at the bottom. So 4 kilometers an hour, 2 miles an hour quicker nearly. It's a big difference in just 1,400 meters of ice.
And you can see our unique way of stopping. We do not have skeleton brakes. We're crashing into those pads, and he had so much momentum as he hit those pads. He launched him off his sled. Look at his style, so efficient, always having ice contact with his feet, and he loads quiet and propels that momentum down the track. You can see some bumps there as he's going into corner 11, and there's actually a negative G there because you're going downhill, 70 miles an hour.
Come over that little rise. The runner's almost clear of the ice, aren't they? Almost a jump. So you've got to take off straight if you want to land straight onto that straightaway.
Yes, and you have to absorb those bumps, because if you move when you're in negative Gs, you will set your sled off into a skid.
Next up, Kyle Tress of the USA, 31-year-old from Lake Placid, New York. America's Cup champion 2009-10 season before he stepped up to Premier class in World Cup. Americans with a burgeoning skeleton program, still lots of young sliders behind, and one of the few who pushes off with a two-handed start.
It is interesting. He pushes two-handed, then he moves to one-handed, and then again back to two hands to load. And a 4:83. That's, of course, it's going to be behind Tretyakov, the fastest man in the world on the start. So, but this is his home track here in Park City. Expect him to make up some time driving.
It's a great boost for the Americans and I guess for the Canadians as well, to have your first 3 World Cup races on tracks that you have grown up with.
It is, and you can see ice flying, chips flying off the wall, and he made that mistake going into corner 5. You cannot make a mistake here in Park City. The track is way too short, especially with the start being that far behind. He's going to have to just relax and rely on his second run to try and move up in the field.
It seems counterintuitive that you try and do as little as possible on the sled when you're hurtling head first at 80, 90 miles an hour, but that's the way it has to be.
Very true.
Through he comes, 0.96 behind, 50.77. Well, actually, despite the fact that he started slower than Maurizio Aioli of Italy, he comes down 2 tenths quicker, so it could have been a lot worse, but he's got lots of stuff he can tidy up for Heat 2, which is always a bonus, I suppose.
Have a look at Kyle's start here. Two-handed off the block. He wants to try and get as much power and strength going straight. Then he moves to the one-handed so he can be tall. And now we're seeing him out of corner 6. Ice flying. He bumps off too high in exit of 7. That's going to make so much work for him in this labyrinth. When he's wanting to be as quiet as possible, he's having to muscle that sled so he doesn't get later and later in each corner.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just a sequence of very quick, high-pressure corners as well. Lots of G-forces on this track right from the top. Wearing the yellow vest of our World Cup leader is the winner in Lake Placid last weekend, Martins Ducros. The Ducros brothers first and second, ahead of Alexander Tretyakov. Martins on a streak, hasn't been beaten since, where did we go back to? Was it November 2011, I seem to recall?
Koenigsegg, when he had the crash in Koenigsegg. Yeah.
So 13 consecutive races, including last year's World Championships.
Now Martin's start is still very competitive despite his ACL tear this summer, and he wasn't able to do as much training. But a 463 to not be that far behind Tretyakov is extremely impressive considering the amount of pain that he's in. Thankfully, our sport, you're just running straight, not having to do lateral movements and rely on that ACL. Very smooth going through. You can see how hard that transition is from 4 to 5. His body kind of pops up, but he's controlling those waves. He's smooth through 6. Barely any work at all. Look at how quiet he is on his sled. 130 kilometers per hour. Ooh, a little bit of work there in that negative G, but he's so smooth going through 11 and 12. I suspect that he's going to be right there with Tretyakov.
He's already overhauled the Russian, started only 0.04 of a second slower, and that's one of the great things about Superman, that he just can really peg Tretyakov back. And they're in an elite class that almost nobody else can match. The two of them, Martins Ducours and Thomas Ducours, his brother, and Tretyakov. But he takes the lead, 49.75. And again, you know, Alex is looking at tidying up those errors that Martins manages to eradicate.
You can see his long stride. He's not a very tall guy, but he has a long, efficient stride, always having contact with the ice. I think this is where he made a little bit of issues. You can see his runners kind of going back and forth. He was working where there was no pressure. We saw him up by 1100, and then all of a sudden he was down by 600s at the bottom. Tretyakov still had the highest speed coming out of 14.
Well, Martins was faster at the top. We have got a race on our hands indeed. We had a very close race last weekend. I mean, Frank Rommel was only 200s behind Martins after the first heat before he got disqualified, so we've still got the potential for lots of excitement. Now here is the top place German slider in the World Cup rankings, young Alexander Krökel, 2011 world champion at the junior level. And last year was his rookie World Cup season. In fact, last year Frank Rommel was the only driver on the World Cup team who had even raced in a World Cup race before. They had 2 rookies out of 3 sliders.
Yes, and Krökel, he's definitely stepped up into the big shoes, having a great result in Placid last week. He was sliding very well in training today. He's aerodynamic, he's tall, and he's lean. That's so important on this Park City track. To see what happens here on race day with his start.
477, certainly no disgrace. I mean, we are looking at 2 or 3 sliders being that little step further forward.
Yes, and you do not want to see these sliders making any movements. You want them to be very quiet on their sleds. He was smooth through that transition of 4-5. Look at his oscillations. He's controlling them very well. Didn't see ice falling off the wall, so he didn't hit. He's smooth. He's not as fast as Tretyakov going through this labyrinth. He's a little bit behind here. Track's not long enough. I don't know if he'll be able to catch up.
May well find himself in the top 4 or 5 sleds. Definitely had a big break between the fastest 4 after the first heat last weekend and anyone else. 1900s behind. 124 though. We saw Tretyakov 123.6. That was good speed at the bottom. That was really strong.
Very, very impressive considering what was happening in the middle part of how far behind he was on his start. So they definitely have something figured out with their lines and obviously their equipment when it comes to this warmer weather.
Well, as you said, Alex, he's a long, lean figure, and that works well. You don't have a big frontal area. You see hardly any shoulder there visible at all.
That's right. You see his head move a little bit. That's the type of steering that you want to do on this Park City track. Not big, muscly turns. Just move your head a little bit in the direction. Let yourself gradually drift into the entries of corners. Very nice coming out of 14. A bit of a bump there. He's going downhill, and now he's going uphill, so he's trying to be as small as possible.
Well, pulled himself right into contention. Alexander Krökel tied with Alexander Tretyakov. They are 600s behind Martins Ducours. Of course, all the sleds being weighed very carefully after each of their runs. Next up is Dr. Ice, Kristen Bromley, Shelley Rudman helping with the sled at the top. And their daughter Ella and grandparents are there as well. Travel as a family. And Kristen now in his 17th year as a GB slider.
Yes, and Kristen and his brother Richard work very, very hard on their equipment, and they're trying to perfect it for Sochi. So we see him up in the ranks and then drop back, and they only really have the World Cup circuit to do testing, so they have to take advantage, not having a home track where he could spend a year at home just testing materials and sleds and setups. And he wants to be here testing against the best in the world because the goal is to win an Olympic medal.
85.3 kilometers an hour through the first speed trap. And 129 there. Well, that's a little shy of Martins Duco's 130.1. Still very good pace.
Oh, he went late into 11 and at 12, that entry, that's what happens. You go late in 11, oscillations are created, and he got bumped off the wall, pushed away. And that's going to be hard to catch up here in the bottom portion.
7 tenths behind, only 120 to 123 at the fastest sliders. It's a little bit disappointing. 50.55. He's fourth at the moment, but well, 8 tenths away from the leaders. And that's a big gap into which a lot of extra sleds can fall.
Yes, especially here in Park City. It's exciting that we only have 600s between the top three. We're used to seeing Martins out in front by 6 tenths, but you can see here's his mistake coming out of 10. He's drifting to that left wall, going into a left-hand corner, and it's going to be over.
Well, same mistake as Shelley, but she was on the driver's right of the track there, and her leg had to come right out to counter-steer against the wall.
Yes, he's trying to steer so hard because those oscillations, he's trying to even them out, and it just didn't work for him today.
Well, second heat to tidy things up and to try and move up the order. Meanwhile, Matt Antoine at the top of the track from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. Matt has been sliding since 2003, made the US national team 2005. So now starting to get into that well-established status where you know the tracks when you arrive.
Matt made a very risky decision this summer, all in hopes to be at his best in Sochi to get knee surgery. So 481, we're used to seeing him starting much faster, but he's been recovering. He's doing well enough that he made it back on the World Cup circuit, and it's just going to be tough with his confidence not being in the best physical shape, but he's going to have to relax, rely on his knowledge here on his home track, and so far things are going very, very smooth. A little bit too early into corner 7 there. You can see some ice chips going off. It's too bad we don't have a camera right there so you can see what happens in the end when you're too high like that. Corner 8 will actually pop you off your sled a little bit. You can see hit there on the entrance of 12. He's going to be working very hard to try and even out these oscillations.
John Montgomery was saying that he, along with some of the other guys, actually flipped off the sled in 12 in training. Is the ice quite as quick this morning, do we think?
No, it's not. I'm surprised. I think it's coming from Martins and Tretyakhov's push of why they went as fast as what they did. We've been seeing, like, these are the women's times from the race yesterday, so it's definitely softer ice, and it's going to be a little bit...
What are you saying? They're sliding like girls? I can't believe that's what you just said, Melissa Hollingsworth.
I was trying not to say that. But
Good day yesterday for the USA in the women's skeleton race. Katie Uhlaender second after the first heat, led only by Lizzie Yandel of Great Britain, and ended a 5-year World Cup gold medal drought for herself. She was the world champion, of course, in Lake Placid in February. It's been a longer time since she's won a World Cup race, and won by the smallest margin, just 1,000th of a second. A big day for Katie Uhlaender. Oops, you said there's Matt Antoine just 6 weeks ago recovering from knee surgery. So he gets stronger as the season goes on. John Daly, expect always to see big starts breaking out from this young man.
John's going to be coming off of momentum from his 4th place finish in Lake Placid. He's a strong starter and a great slider, another home track advantage for him. 472, very competitive here. Let's see if he can pull out some of his inside knowledge of this track. His head is a little bit high. You can see there's a little bit of space between his shoulders and his sled. Maybe it's, first run, second World Cup jitters. I'm not exactly sure. Or maybe that's his style all the time. But he does need to try to, on an aerodynamic track like this, he needs to relax and be as small as possible.
128.3, that's 4th or 5th through the speed traps. It's 4th place at the moment.
Having a smooth run, we haven't seen any ice chips come off the wall to see if he can hold this speed out of corner 14 going in this uphill section.
Still ahead of teammate Matt Antoine. 122.6, a little quicker as well in the speed traps. 50.13, that's 3/10 quicker than his teammate, so that puts him much closer to the lead group, but he's still in this yawning chasm, 38 hundredths away from the leader, 32 hundredths from joint second.
You're about a tiny bit.
Well, if you're giving away a tenth at the start on this track, that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact math. I would my guess would be 2/10 at the bottom. A tenth at the top is going to automatically be 2/10 at the bottom. So you're going to have to find that on this track driving-wise, and it's a short track, and it's very, very simple, really. It's not rocket science to get down this track whatsoever. Everybody can get down here fairly fast, and so it really does come down to how fast you push your sled.
I always say the devil is in the detail, and that would seem to be, you know, it seems to be in auto racing the same. The more straightforward the track, the harder it is to find the tiny margins to win. Tomas Dukurs of Latvia then, our 9th starter, second in the World Cup rankings, because we had one race so far this season in Lake Placid, and he was runner-up to his brother Martins, who currently leads. Now, can he get in that little 600ths of a second group that is clustered around the gold medal, all clawing at each other for supremacy?
Look at the sled kind of bouncing that start groove. It's something that is very dangerous for us pushing our sleds. It's a risk that you could push out of the group. But a 470 is very competitive with Tretyakov and his brother, and I suspect with him and Martins working very closely together on every track, his lines will be very similar.
Good momentum as well, 85.3 Ks.
He was working really hard to get over into corner 6, so you could see his toe was out. He was trying to drag himself over for an earlier entry. It worked for him, but he might have created a little bit too much work.
At the moment, still in 3rd spot. Make that 4th because we're in tie for 2nd. 33 hundredths back. We get John Daly at the bottom of the track, 38 hundredths back. So this is starting to drift away a little from Tomas Dukurs. 4th place, a whisker in front of John Daly, just 8 hundredths quicker than the American. So separated from the lead trio. But now we're setting up more intriguing battles for Heat 2.
It is, and this is exciting. Last year we were seeing Martins out front by, like I said, 6/10 every run. So now, who knows who's going to win that gold medal today?
Well, when Martins gets stronger and stronger through the season, we may see those gaps opening up again. Just gave him a really good run for his money in Lake Placid.
You can see that sled bouncing in the groove, and you want to stay as square as possible, have all of your force going forward. If you lean on that groove at all to the side, you'll easily pop out and it'll be devastation. Won't even get a second round if you push out of the groove.
I was watching them freshly cut the grooves this morning, just about 20 minutes before the start, to try and give everybody the fairest chance of making a good getaway.
And Park City is, in our opinion, does the best job on the start groove. They ice it over, cut it every morning. It's a fair, clean groove, which is fantastic for the skeleton athletes.
Yeah, new and fresh and not abused by hundreds of bobsleigh spikes, especially, is what you need. Well, this will be our 10th slider then, start draw number 11 for Johnny Fairbairn of Canada. As you can see, the Canadians, big supporters of the Movember awareness and fundraising for men's cancer.
And Fairbairn has been sliding extremely well. He's tall, he is slender, he's lean. His aerodynamics has been his biggest asset in training here. 482, not too bad. 2/10 behind here at the start, but that's to be expected when you're up against the best in the world, Tretyakov from Russia.
Well, John Daly last year had a dreadful start to the season, really rocked his confidence. Johnny is having a much better start, and Johnny Fairbairn as well. You know, he's having a really good start to the year.
He is. He went a little bit early into corner 5 there, but he recovered very well. So he's being quiet on his sled, very aerodynamic. You can see him working. He went a little bit early into corner 11 there, and see how it sets him up into 12. Smooth, no ice falling off the walls. Having a fantastic run.
Towards the top 6 at the moment, started 8th fastest, but is having, as you say, a quiet run. Drags down the wall though.
That's the first time we've seen that hit out of 14.
That brings him across the line in 6th place, fraction in front of Matt Antoine of the USA. He's the first of 3 Canadian sliders in the field. We'll have to see how the rest perform. Well, that is 10 sleds down and 17 still to go.
Very smooth into 12 here. Coming out of 14, this is the first time we've seen him. He came out too close to that right wall, that angle, and he's going to tap, which is hard on your time because he's now going uphill. You hit the wall, that's friction slowing you down.
Randy.
Saying hi to his fiance at home, Randy Brooks.
Randy will be watching as Martins Ducours is our race leader. Tiny group at the top, very close together. Coming up after the break, we have our Olympic champion John Montgomery next to go.
Will follow Jeremy. Oppenberg, very technical track. Kyrgyzstan, parachute start. It's about 2 hours out. Then off to Eagles, Austria. Looking at the 2012 Winter season. Sochi, Russia. World Cup. 1 year out of the 2014 Winter Olympic Games. It's going to be a great season.
How you doing? All right, how are you?
Wearing a Canadian toque.
You're getting up.
Park City, Utah, Viessmann World Cup #2 for men's skeleton, and we are ready for the second portion of our sliding. There's Martins Ducours, who leads after the first 10 sleds. Tiny margin at the top. We've got a tie for second. Alex Krökel, Alexander Tretyakov, 600ths off the leader. Here now is our Olympic champion, John Montgomery, back on ice.
And he spent all summer training very hard, and he's had, look at that, 472, very competitive start. John has been working very hard on all of his sled preparations. He's had some issues here this week with some frame rails busting off for him. He's wanting to have a sled that is competitive in Sochi. He wants to be the back-to-back gold medalist champion, so he's trying everything in his power, spending a lot of money and time just training at home. That's why we didn't see him last week. See if he can get things here together. He's not that far behind the pack.
He was saying he might do well just to make the cut in the top 20, but this is a good-looking run from John. Joined us in the booth yesterday. Today, alongside me, Melissa Hollingsworth, his teammate, so you're watching him the way he was watching you. 6400s back. This is top 6, top 7, 50.47 slides. Should be pretty happy with that.
He will be, considering how training went for him. It was awful. He was so disappointed with how his sled was responding. And you can see him do the... That was a really nice somersault. We don't get points for that.
A bit of styling there. Got to be a little bit of a showman occasionally, and John has that ability in spades.
He works really hard on his start. We have the ice house in Calgary where we can practice our technique and the power and speed. He runs it out very far.
Talking about sled building with him yesterday, and he's saying, you know, there are a lot of very good sleds out there, but he just wants one that is tailored exactly to how he likes to slide, and that's why he's building his own.
He's going to have to get... Wow. I'm glad he didn't smash his head into the ice there.
Yeah, you know, it's the ironic thing about this sport is it's easier to injure yourself in the outrun than almost anywhere else.
It's the most dangerous part of the track.
Yeah. Hitting the brakes is the most dangerous bit of this sport. Well, who'd have thought? Now, next up, head first, Ed Smith from Great Britain, one of 2 rookies in the men's programme for GB. 26-year-old electrician from Bristol.
And this start is very quick. It drops off immediately. So a 475, you're going to see a lot of, everyone's going to be close together. If it was a long, flat start, we're going to see big gaps in the start times. Smooth transition from 4 to 5. Everything's looking very smooth at this point, but a little bit high in 6. Let's see how, oh, I bet you that pushed him away a little bit. He's going to have to be working to get back on his line through this labyrinth.
128.0, just 1/10 of a kilometre an hour away from John Montgomery, who we just seen.
Has quite a bit of height there. The corner 12 pushed him off. You could hear that bump on the wall.
Finish this run inside the top 10, and he'll be looking pretty good for a second heat. 11th place, 50.95. See Coach Andy Schmidt there. Only started sliding 3 years ago, Ed. Last year, 3rd place in the Intercontinental Cup, which is the 2nd tier of sliding, but he's only, I think, been to Park City here once before. Obviously, lots of errors creeping in there.
You can see his disappointment. He knows the mistakes that he's made, and you can't make a mistake here. Watch, he's looping up and down. Those are the oscillations, those are the pressures in corner 6, up to the roof, down to the belly. That's a longer path to take, and of course, it's going to be a slower time.
Tiny errors creeping in on a number of the corners, and they all tend to add up.
He's going over this negative G part of the track and skidding. His toe came out to the side to try and, it's like a rudder, trying to straighten himself out, but at that point, too much speed was bleeded up.
Martin Stucours leads. This is the 13th of our 27 sliders. Just to remind you that only the fastest 20 go through into the second heat. So once you get to sort of 14th or 15th in the running order, then your focus is very definitely on making the cut for heat 2. You may well think at this stage, if you're Rafael Meyer, that the leaders are out of sight. But this is a unique sport, isn't it, Mel? Because it's not about what everybody else does. It's just what you do on the ice on any day.
Exactly. If you're looking at what everybody else is doing, that's just going to take away from your energy and your focus. It's really you, your sled, in the track. And where your time falls is where it falls.
Just scraping a helmet chin piece down on the ice.
Yes, and he's obviously trying to stay as aerodynamic as possible because that is his asset here on this track. He's a smaller in the chest guy, so if he's low, you can see him really low to the sled, but sometimes his chin is going to be touching the ice.
He hasn't got too much speed. 127 kilometers an hour is not anywhere close to the front runners. Slider from Austria, he'll have grown up on the Eagles track at Innsbruck, which is all about aerodynamics and about being quiet on the sled. You would think that that would help him here, but maybe it's just not enough experience yet to be able to master Park City. So here's Coach Martin Rettel, the man who still holds the track record. Well, you can see the scraping on his chin of his helmet, and that's where all the noise was coming from. Let's listen to his run here. He hasn't got too much speed. 127 kilometers an hour is not anywhere close to the front runners. Slider from Austria, he'll have grown up on the Eagles track at Innsbruck. Well, the added bonus of replay of my commentary as well, sir. But very noticeable there that you could hear the chattering of the helmet almost all the way through the run.
And you could actually see his head get bounced in low point there off that expansion joint. So sometimes that doesn't feel so good on your neck.
Yeah, he'll have a stiff neck tomorrow. Another of our German rookies, second in last year's Junior World Championships, just 20 years old, Christopher Groother. Grew up around the Oberhof track as a ski jumper, and then persuaded to start skeleton when he was 16.
That's the thing about skeleton, is that you have to recruit these athletes that are coming out of other sports.
I'm sure that his mother thought skeleton was marginally less of a stupid sport for her son than ski jumping, but he seems to develop very quickly.
Yes, and that would be because the German program is so deep, and they are targeting these athletes. They get them young, and they want to make sure that they can be world champions in a few years. They want to give them this experience on the World Cup circuit, and they're fortunate enough that when they're this young, coming from another sport, they are competitive immediately. The equipment that they have is amongst the best in the world, and the coaches that they have are very experienced and are very successful from luge themselves.
No matter what your age, if you get into the German team, boy, you are good. O'Hare having a run into 6th position. Come on, guys, look a little bit less underwhelmed than that. That was a good run. Don't forget, he raced last year some Intercontinental, some European Cup races, so he's not done much mileage. I'm not even sure that he's been to this track at all yet. So for a rookie in his first slide, that's pretty impressive stuff. Top 6.
Yeah, that was a smooth run down the track, and he's the 15th sled. Look at that ice just flying off of his spikes. And watch his load here. He kind of overshoots it a little bit. He hits that saddle. Oh, that was a good thing the track crew did an amazing job of cutting this groove, because he very easily could have popped that groove, and then it would have been devastation.
Well, you're absolutely right. You can see how deep and straight and square-edged that groove is, not like it's had all the bobsled runners over it yesterday. So he was saved by the prep. Next up, Canada's Eric Nielsen. Faceman, well, didn't have a great weekend in Lake Placid. Let's see what he can produce here. And this is probably, I'm guessing, this is probably not a track that he's going to be really thrilled at being at. He seems to be a guy who likes to drive a little more than glide.
Well, he hasn't been here since 2008, his very first year of sliding. So it's a different experience for him this year, being on the World Cup and obviously improving as much as what he has in his driving abilities. 473, that's a very competitive start. Eric's a bigger guy, he's heavy. We'll have to see if he can really back off the muscling with his driving, be quiet on the sled, and stay as aerodynamic as possible.
Very good momentum, 85.3 kilometers an hour, 53 miles an hour. By the time he gets to the next speed trap, he'll be over 80 miles an hour. That's how fast they accelerate.
Yes, and you know, he's having a great run so far. Things are smooth and very effortless. I haven't been seeing any mistakes. Smooth into 12. It kind of bumped him away a little bit, but it just set his line. He's hanging in there.
This is a top 4 slide from Faceman. This is really nice.
And with his weight, it'll help him in this uphill section.
121.9, very good pace. 5th position, 50.09. Nice is right, yeah.
We
That's
know
a good slide.
his fiancée Heather will be at home cheering right now, happy to see that he had a great first. Oh, now he wanted to do a somersault. Maybe he saw John's spectacular.
And present. Come on, wet. Oh, that's a 4.2 from the Russian judge, I'm afraid.
That's what we do in our dryland training in Canada, a little bit of gymnastics at the Wind Sports Center in Calgary.
Well, there's definitely a little streak of showman running through Eric Nielsen, but he's deadly serious when it comes to his sliding. That was a great first run.
Perfect. Let's see if he can hold it together for his second run. He's kind of known for that one-hit wonder.
Well, you know, last year, his breakout season, his rookie year, he was either way up there or, you know, making the headlines for other reasons.
He almost did a monkey stand right there.
Yeah, well, good first slide from Eric Nielsen of Canada. Next up, Hiro Takahashi of Japan. And for both Hiro and teammate Shinsuke Toyama, last year was really a big World Cup season. And they need to start building on that knowledge.
You can see that the sun has come out. Now that's going to change things a little bit for the rest of the field. It may start to make it a little bit mushy, the ice, and softer in some sections, and you might see some shades having to cover the track so that we don't lose it. That's a big danger here in Park City, any track really in the world, that if concrete is exposed, you could actually wreck a runner. And that obviously is tough on the bank and tough on your time when you have a big scratch in your runner.
So in the men's bobsleigh race yesterday, sliders, the temperature changed up quite dramatically. It was very sunny to start, then clouded over. The sliders coming out of 25th, 26th, 27th were in top 3, top 5 positions, so it can change quite dramatically.
Yes, it can, and that corner 14 is completely open, so I don't know what the ice will be like in there. It could be slowing them down.
Still decent speed at the bottom, 121.2. Koshi-san relatively happy with that. Comes in just outside the top 10. And he's the 16th slider, but yeah, if you're outside the top 20 now, if you're Frank Rommel, and the sun's now coming in, oh my lord, give me a break.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be nerve-wracking. Frank will be watching this sun beat down on the ice, and he'll just be hoping that he can try to move up on the...
Well, Katsuhiro Koshi has been sliding a long while, now coaching for the last 2 seasons. Mel, he must have been an established star when you arrived.
Yes, I remember watching Koshi when I was sliding, and he was somebody that you always looked for to copy his form on the sled. We call it the Japanese bullet style, where they're just so quiet, head down, and you just let the sled run. So they've been working really hard this preseason. They were in Whistler for quite like a couple of weeks, I think, because they had problems there on that track, and they just want to get those demons out of the way.
Plus, if you're going to go on the ice, if you start at the fastest, most daunting track of the lot, the rest seem relatively mild. Now, Ander Mirambel, 17th of our starters. Again, this season, his target will be to try and move up the top 20 all the time. 485 getaway.
Anders, he loves this sport, obviously. He's from Spain. I'm not really sure why he'd want to trade out his Quicksilver diving suit for a skeleton sled going in the winter down icy chutes, but it's his passion. And we've seen some great lines from him. Not right there, but in training, he definitely was doing much. He's there. He's competitive with the guys.
27.5, decent speed, 79.3 miles an hour. As you say, a small nation in terms of winter sports. He is the team.
Exactly, and a bump again out of 14 going in that uphill section. It's definitely hard to overcome that.
14th place, so he has got sliders behind him to give him a decent cushion, and actually he should be relatively happy with that, I would think. It's not going to help Ed Smith, who's in 15th, or Maurizio Aioli 16th. Rafa Mayan 17th. Yeah, I think he's clearly tidied up a couple of things that were troubling him in training.
Yes, he's very happy. We love seeing that type of emotion. And again, it's you and the track and your sled, and you know when you've had a great run.
Well, as you say, you know, there's no solid reason in logic why a man from Barcelona would want to spend his winters freezing up a mountain, but he loves this so much. That's why he drives himself on. He's no different from anybody else. He's doing this for the love.
Yeah, you can't get rich doing skeleton.
Yeah, how to make a small fortune in skeleton? Start with a big one. So Ander Mirambel comes down in 14th place. And this is now our 18th slider, Matthias Guggenberger. 27 will start, only 20 will take part in the second heat. So we're going to lose 7 sliders. At the moment, Aioli of Italy and Meyer of Austria are in the potential drop zone. Great look on the chrome helmet. You can see the blue sky reflected in his head. 484 getaway, fraction quicker than Ander Mirambel we just seen.
Matthias had some issues with his back last year. I remember he had a cracked vertebrae. So over the summer, obviously having to rehab that and still try to get strong and fast. Those are tough things to overcome, especially when you're dealing with hundreds of a second. It's hard to find that in your dryland training when you're in that much pain, as you know, being down in a bobsled hurting your back.
128.2, good speed as well, just a little quicker than the Spaniard.
You can hear his chin scraping on the ice. Ooh, he had a little bit of trouble there in 13. You can see he just got flipped off the entrance of that corner.
That has cost him a lot of speed, maybe 2 kilometers an hour. Where is he going to end up? In 15th place. So still 3 sliders behind him. Not exactly where he would have hoped to be, or Coach Martin Rettel would have wanted to see him. He has got a margin for error to try and get into the second heat. But yeah, Mel, a couple of mistakes lower down the track and no time to recover.
No, this is a finesse track. So when you have a mistake like this, watch him come out of corner 12 into 13. We're going to see his body move quite a bit. Look at, he's almost off his sled dragging. And that happens so quickly. It's really hard to set yourself up to try and overcome that.
So nearly thrown off, took him 2 full corners to get himself back into position. I'm Martin Haven alongside me, Melissa Hollingsworth. There is 2002 Olympic silver medalist in women's skeleton, Leanne Parsley. One of the, I guess, you know, the early sliders were really breaking ice, weren't they, literally, because 2002, the first time skeleton in its modern form was ever an Olympic sport.
Yeah, and her and her teammate Tristan Gale put on a fantastic show for the very first Olympic game for women's skeleton. I was trackside. I missed those Olympics, but I was cheering them on.
Great to come and experience it. Giovanni Molisano of Italy next up, waiting to see whether he can make it into the second heat. He's our 19th slider, so when he's completed, there's only one spot left in the race. 4.76. Now that's a good bit of armoury to try and get him into the race. Both the Italian guys are starting top 10 starts.
He's working pretty hard in that upper portion, though. You can see he was going late in some of the corners, and his head's moving, and his arms are moving, and you have to have that finesse type style on this track where you cannot see what you're doing whatsoever. Be like an arrow just darting through the sky.
The Italians, both the Italian tracks, Cortina and the now closed Cesana, are real drivers tracks. We have to be very active and steer a lot, and so maybe it's against their training to be able to do this.
Just getting that experience, that's what they need to do, get on different tracks and slide.
Molisano, 19th spot, tail of the field, and that may be a little bit of a danger for him. Danny Liccardi, former women's slider for Italy, is now on their coaching staff. So they've got a good bit of relevant driving experience to draw on.
To break that photo cell, which is 15 meters down from the
Molisano in 19th place. We have 7 sleds still to go. And let's see who makes it into the field. Martin Stuko is at the top of the pile. Going to be a tough battle for the podium positions. Whether anybody outside of the top 2 positions is going to get in is slightly academic. This will be our 20th sled. For the men, 115 kilos all up weight, including the sled. If you're heavier, then you can have the option to run a slightly lighter sled to try and balance the books. This is Alexandros Kefalas, representing Greece. Born and bred in Switzerland. Greek father, Swiss mother. Obviously, there are quite enough Swiss sliders and not that many Greek sliders, which gives him the option to represent his paternal country.
Wow, look at that snow and ice just fly out of his spikes as he's pushing the sled. It's definitely getting quite a bit softer. 489, that's the back of the pack. You can see his like apricot orangish type visor here. That's going to help him see the track a little bit better, reflect that white ice off so he can see those lines and where he's actually trying to get those entries of every corner down the track.
Anything that cuts down the glare on a sunny day with a whiteout in front of you has got to help.
He's working very hard here. You can see his body leaning, but with the ice getting that much softer, obviously his runners are cutting in, and he's not able to just hover above and have those gentle movements. The knife of his blades are actually getting caught up in the ice, and it's hard to get over into those corners.
It was up to 17th spot, 19th now, but in fact he slips down to he's tied, in fact, with Molisano of Italy. So Alexandros Kefalas of Greece and Giovanni Molisano of Italy tied in 19th spot. The race is now full, so now it's bump day. You've got to go fast or go home, and that means pressure for the rest of them.
Look at this ice and snow coming out from underneath, and that's going to make things very, very difficult on the start because his foot is actually going to grab the ice and then it's going to slip, and then it's going to be dragging all that snow up into the air. Look at his body leaning out of corner 10. You're not wanting to do any work at this point in the track because it's that negative downhill, that hill, so it's a negative G.
You can see just by the edge walls there's about 2 or 3 inches of really quite thick, rough, bumpy ice that's not planed. Yeah. If you get right up to the wall, that's double jeopardy. So the race is full. We have 7 sliders still to go, the first of whom is Lukas Kummer. Lots of pressure now on these athletes and, of course, those on the bubble who are waiting to see whether or not they need to start warming up for Heat 2. Impressive leg speed from Lucas Kummer, real turnover. 471, that's the kind of speed that he needs to try and push him up into the top 20.
It is so impressive being at the back of the pack here with the ice being a little bit softer, and that's what you need here on this Park City track, is that fast start.
That was the fourth fastest getaway in the heat.
Ooh, and that bump is going to hurt him. I did that yesterday, and I know that's not the line you want to take. It puts you high into 7, and then you're trying to recover the rest of the way down.
He's gone from 4th at the start to 8th to 12th after that bump. Little steer going on there as well down Albert's Alley.
Yes, he's now panicking a little bit, working. You can see he's skidding and oscillations up to the roof, down to the belly. He holds on here. Oh, a slight bump on that uphill section. Very slow speed.
Out of the race, I'm afraid. He was looking very good until he got into Albert's Alley. And then it all started to get away. So what's he feeling now, Mel? Is the ice faster than he's expecting, or is the sled steering less, or how's that working?
I suspect that he is getting stuck on his lines. That's what's happening. And so he's working really hard in that sticky ice to try and get over. And then when he works that hard, he'll actually kick the sled into a skid. That's what we saw from him. Up to the roof, down to the belly. Look at that looping, those oscillation pressures. Bumps off that wall, and the entry is 7. Gets height here. Won't be able to see the entry of 8, but we know it's a rough one. And look at him skid his sled here. Even though it's sticky, he's just working that hard that he's breaking it into a skid.
So the track is getting frostier, the runners are sticking more, and he's having to really wrench it to get it into turn.
Yes, you can see the lines of the sleds coming down through the low point through that frost, and it's not the ideal conditions.
No, so in a sport that's all about subtle nuances, particularly here, he's having to monster the sled, and unfortunately that means he is out of the second heat. Shinsuke Toyama now is going to face the same challenge. Martin Rettel was right, with the humidity and the refrigeration on the track is frosting. It's making it more difficult for the later runners, perhaps even than for the front runners.
Not the strongest start, 482 for Toyama, and that's going to be hard to regain any ground on the short Park City track.
Shinsuke and his teammate Hiro were both starting to really build up their starting speed last season. It does look as though Toyama's taken a little step back again. I wonder whether he was entirely healthy through the summer. The great Olympians always say any day you're not training is the day that your rival is, and you take a step back, you don't stand still.
Well, you're also trying to peak for certain points in this season. Obviously, World Championships is a really important race for us for Olympic qualifiers, and you know you can't be at 100% all the time. You're going to have some dips and valleys.
Wow, 14th place. He managed to drive it neatly, so that puts him in the race, and that bumps out 2 sleds, Molisano and Kefalas. They were tied in 20th spot. In fact, they are now still shown tied as 20th. So they are both still in the race. How are we seeing that going awry?
Well, with Rommel and Chudinov still to come, I suspect that there's going to be some more movement here in the top 20.
You may well be right. Well, at the moment, Shinsuke Toyama is in the race in 14th spot. He's 100th behind Kyle Tress of the USA, who went off 3rd at the top of the hill. So, actually, you've got to say, he really made good use of the conditions, whatever they are at the moment. They didn't do too badly. Martis Tukos of Latvia is our race leader and our World Cup points leader. Next, we get to our second Swiss slider, Michael Hofer. Again, starting outside the top 20. Brings with it a lot of pressure.
Ooh, and he had an interesting load there. This track at the top, it drops away very quickly. You'll be pushing your sled, and then all of a sudden your sled speeds up. And if you do not have that top speed in your athletic ability, you can make your loads look quite spectacular.
84.7 kilometers an hour, decent speed. Should be enough to get him maybe into the top 15. Start, though, only 21st, so he's going to have to drive his way into the race from here.
Smooth run so far. It's looking great in his form. He's keeping form all the way down the track. He was using his toes in corner 12 quite a bit. You could hear that scraping on the ice.
18th place. He is now in Heat 2. Good run down the straight. Little tap might just drag him back a fraction. It doesn't need to be much. 19th. So he has now bumped up Molosano and Kefalas. He is tied with Raphael Meyer of Austria. They are the last two men in the race. Molosano, Kefalas and Kummer, his teammate, will not get a second run. Well, he knows that there was things he could have done better. At least he's in.
See him using his toes here, and with that softer type ice, it might not be the best decision of driving technique to have your toes dragging on the ice.
I'm sure by this stage in the heat, having made your runner selection early on what you expected the weather to be, there must be some athletes with a sinking feeling, knowing without question they're on the wrong type of runner and they are in for a world of hurt.
Yes, you have to be somewhat of a weatherman in this sport.
Yeah.
I often think that guesswork and prediction play a larger part than anybody would like in a pro sport like this. Next up then, another of our GB rookies, David Smith. Start draw at number 25 for him. And from Newton Abbott in Devon, personal trainer and World Cup rookie, 5th in last year's Intercontinental Cup. I was being ribbed by the British crew about talking about his quads last week because he is just quad-tastic, but what a turn of speed Dave Swift has got away from the start.
And he is staying true to his last name, Swifty, here with that start. A third-ranked start being that late in the field, that's definitely going to be a huge advantage for him on this short Park City track.
Let's see what he can produce out of this. 129.1, that is really good speed.
He's quiet on his sled, he's handling those straightaways. Great lines down the track. Let's see if he can hold it up here through corner 14.
There's some steering work going on, but he is still in 6th position.
Ooh, big skid.
That's horrible straight away. How is that going to affect him? He goes from 6th to 8th to 13th. He's comfortably in the race, but wow, what could have been just drifted away there. With that, again, one exit that goes completely wrong for you, but I think he's unhappy with the rest of the run.
Well, hey, he was 25th in Lake Placid, 13th here. Yes, he knows he can make that up on the second run. Skeleton is 2 runs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at this start. Look at that power. Those swift legs, like his last name. Smooth load onto his sled. But now have a look at 14. He comes out and he has pressure in the sled, kicks off into a skid, and he hits at such a severe angle. And now he has to go in an uphill portion part of the track, and he's going sideways. That's like hockey skates just trying to stop.
Yeah. Andy Schmidt has seen lots and lots of runs in his career, and he knows as well as David Swift when it's going wrong. Now from Norway, our young rookie, Jarle Johannessen. Start draw number 26 for him. 5:10 getaway, that puts him at the back of the field in terms of pace. It really means that he needs to do something superhuman now to make the race.
Here's space. Look at his head go into these higher pressure corners. It's not just getting sucked down. It's almost like his face is going underneath the sled. That comes down to neck strength.
Still very young, 23-year-old nurse from Fredrikstad. He's got a Norwegian coach, Desiree Bjerke, who, of course, you have raced against for many years. He's got a Norwegian-built sled as well. Unfortunately, his first appearance in Park City, the lack of relative knowledge is showing. 52.16 leaves Desiree Bjerke impassive. Well, Melissa, you must remember when you were coming to tracks for the very first time and what a struggle you must have felt to try and get this thing in your head, locked in 6 runs of training.
Yeah, it is difficult for newcomers to deal with just the pressure of it being your first, second World Cup, whatever it is. It's a very mental game, and you're dealing with hundredths of a second, so one little mistake can be a really, really big loss.
You saw how exasperated he was at the end of it. But, you know, that's the way it is. 6 runs in training. You give a Formula 1 driver 6 laps of a track and then make him go out and qualify. He'll say, no, come on, that's not right. That's the way it has to be done. Well, Frank Rommel's got more experience than Jarle Johannessen, but he's also got quite a mountain to climb. He's getting just about the worst of the ice in terms of how many sleds have been down and how much sun has been on it. So that DQ in Lake Placid is haunting him still.
Frank calls himself the grandfather of the German team, but yet he's not that old at 28 years old. And he's not the fastest starter, but we know that his driving it astonished all of us. It's absolutely amazing. He's got that aerodynamic form. We'll have to see how the ice conditions are going to be a factor in his slide today.
Let's chart the progress. 20th only at the start. Now 14th at the first intermediate split. 129.7, 80.6 miles an hour. Good speed.
Wow. He's
up to 11th place.
This is amazing. This is exactly what we expect from Frank Rommel. It's just we're not used to seeing him way back in the pack.
Fantastic steer there, up to 7th spot. John Morgan's telling me in my ears he'll finish 7th. I think he might even make top 6. 4th place at the moment. 4th place run from Frank Rommel, 49.93, out of the backfield. The penultimate slider in the field. John Jackson yesterday in the 2-man started 24th out of the 28 sleds and finished 3rd fastest. And that is testament to what they do with this track. The track workers have produced superlative ice this week.
That's definitely a big monkey off his back, that's for sure, just to get that run out of the way, knowing that the ice conditions have changed so much since his competitors, the Dukers, have gone off.
Well, last week in Lake Placid, he was 200s behind Martins Dukers in the first run. Here he's 1800s, but he still has a chance of a medal, and what a slide. Wow.
Top speed at 124.3 kilometers an hour, extremely impressive.
That also means that he has bumped out Benny Meyer of Austria and Michael Hofer of Switzerland, who were tied in 20th spot. And that just ramps up the pressure on this man, Sergei Chudinov. He now knows there is speed to be found in the track still. Can he make the top 20?
We've seen some great results from Chudy in the past, and a 3rd ranked start, 468. He has done some great work this summer to get that start up into that competitive rank.
He is giving himself every option to make it here. The reason he's at the tail of the field, didn't slide in Lake Placid last weekend, so no World Cup points.
Right, and everything's looking really good. He was a little bit early into corner 7 there, pushed him away, but he's handling it very well. He just wants to try and move up into that pack again and then give himself another opportunity to move up on that 2nd run.
Well, he's given himself every chance. 3rd fastest at the start, and unless he really makes a big mistake, he'll finish top 4, top 5.
Oh, and he just fell off that corner a little bit. As you see, when you go sideways in the uphill portion, it bleeds speed.
I have to stop saying things like that. I was doing it all day yesterday, and even as the words are coming out of my mouth, the curse is landing on him. 7th place and 9th finish. I am a jinx, is correct. Well, I apologise wholeheartedly, Sergei. I don't know the Russian for sorry, but probably couldn't say that often enough. However, in the field, in the top 10, welcome back to World Cup. Last year, big breakout year for him, but Mel, the tails away just here.
Yeah, he just had too much height on the exit, and he falls off that corner. You can see it now. It's going to put him into that wall, hits the wall, and his sled's going to break out into a skid in that uphill portion. It's going to cut off a couple kilometers.
Well, I'm sure he's happy to make the 2nd heat. He's in 9th place, so Martins Ducours may be too far away to catch, but Judy going to start adding to his World Cup score, or start creating his World Cup score this year. First of our 2 heats is completed. Top 20 go into the second heat, and head first Ed Smith of Great Britain just makes the race. But Superman has the lead. 0.06 of a second. We're not accustomed to seeing such tiny margins behind Martins Ducours. Will he win? I'm not going to put money on anything. History says Tretyakov could be the man. Alex Krkel is in the reckoning as well. So let's take a look at those margins. Top 3, well, Frank Rommel could easily from that stage take a medal. Thomas Ducours, Eric Nielsen, John Daly, no, probably not. For them, though, there could be a lot of chopping and changing. We're going to have to wait another hour and a half to find out who's going to win the gold medal here in Park City, Utah. Ed Smith will be the first man on the ice as we go 20-1, last to fast. And the remaining 7 sliders, I'm afraid, like Ben Sanford, who was withdrawn with back injuries, will be merely interested spectators. Join Melissa Hollingsworth and me, Martin Haven, for Heat 2, live from Park City, when we see who will end up with the second win of the season.